2020. This is episode 117. We have live Jimmy Turner, now coaching the physician philosopher. This is the 39.6 Facebook and YouTube live finance show, our daily finance show, at least at the moment. We talk general investing, taxes, real estate, syndications, Airbnb, paying for college, paying for childcare, even the car you drive. And today we have a very, very, very special guest, the one, the only Jimmy Turner, the physician philosopher, part of the WCI network, anesthesiologist, money guru also, and more importantly now, physician coach. He's here today to talk about himself and his new program. I hope a lot of people get a value out of this. I'm very excited to have him here. Welcome, Jimmy.
Thanks for having me on, Victor. You know, I don't know if I've ever had an introduction quite like that. That was awesome, man.
Thank you. I just like to get it kickstarted and in the right mood to roll. All right. So if somebody's out there and can actually see and hear, please let me know in the chat and let us know where you're coming from. All right, Jimmy, is that I'm trying to figure out, you're not wearing a Jacksonville Jaguars jersey today, are you?
No, it's a Panthers jersey.
That's the Panthers jersey. All right. So you are living where these days?
Yeah, so I live in North Carolina, just about an hour 15 minutes north of Charlotte. So we are Panthers fans, and we're also Wake Forest fans. They play at noon today.
Demon Deacons.
The Demon Deacons, yeah, that's I'm pretty much raised here now at this point. I went to med school residency fellowship, and I'm an attending now at Wake Forest. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually went to Duke. Did you know that?
You know, I'm not gonna lie, I definitely didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't usually bring it up when people say they're North Carolina because it's not usually a good word.
I don't know if we could be doing the show right now.
I know you're the second live person I interviewed. The last live person I did, or the second live person I've done an interview with, who has substantial animosity toward Duke. Kathy Carroll's from the Research Triangle, and
there you go.
School there, but she was born and raised in the Triangle.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I didn't know about collegiate hatred until I went to college, and then I learned how it's like brainwashed into you culturally. And it's interesting. Now I kind of realize that, you know, people all over this country have their own thoughts because they have different belief systems underlying this.
Yep.
And it took me, you know, now I can kind of get how some think a certain way because they really changed the way you think.
Yeah, totally.
Oh my God.
Especially with college.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we would sell shirts that said "Go to Hell, Carolina." I was like, and people would sell the same thing on the other side, and that was just completely normal.
That's totally true. Yeah, it's kind of funny because depending on which school you are rooting for, it can kind of matter. So like Wake Forest is sometimes considered like the little cousin. So not too many people hate us,
right?
But there are lots of
kind of neutral.
Yeah, exactly. But there are lots of people that don't like Duke. And actually, my kids know, they've been raised in a house where they know the only two teams we're not allowed to cheer for are Duke and Clemson.
Awesome. So where are you from before that?
So originally from Florida. All my extended family's from Savannah, Georgia, but I grew up in Florida, and then moseyed my way up eventually to South Carolina for college at a really small Division II school called Erskine that no one's ever heard of. It's 600 students total.
Wow.
So my wife and I met there. We both played soccer. I was a goalkeeper. She was a center back, and so that's how we met. And then we ended up coming to Winston-Salem for med school and have stayed here ever since.
Wow. So was this a D2 team or was this a club program?
Yeah, no, it was D2. Right. And so there were scholarships and stuff, but it was super small program.
So you knew all of your classmates.
Oh yeah. I mean
a lot of the whole school.
100%. Like you knew everybody that went to school with you because there's only 600 students. So when I went to med school, my med school was actually just a little bit smaller than my college. Like we had 120 students in our class,
right?
And we have 150. So like med school in college were pretty much the same experience.
Wow. Wow. Okay, we're gonna get back to this. So today is Halloween. It's our special Halloween episode. What are you doing for Halloween in this COVID 2020 year?
Yeah. So what we are doing, my little boy just turned 7 this week, and so we're having a little at home kind of thing for him. And like my wife, Kristen, who is just unbelievably creative, has all of these like stations set up and games and like all these. So we're gonna kind of do this at home sort of thing. I don't know that we're going trick or treating. It sounds like that's probably not going to happen. So we're going to be trying to make it as fun as possible at home at the moment. That's the current plan, at least.
Okay. All right. Does he have a costume or multiple?
Yeah, he's got multiple. Yeah, I mean, the kids just they love dressing up. The one he got most recently was like the red Ninjago costume.
I don't know this one. Just a character from a
Ninjago. So yeah, these are like almost like Lego kind of.
Right.
Yeah, ninja things.
Okay. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, it's crazy that Halloween is supposed to be the one day a year that you're supposed to wear a mask and go outside, and this is the one year that you're supposed to wear a mask every other day of the year and not go outside. And now for Halloween, people are not doing Halloween
and staying inside.
Yeah, I know.
Are you guys going out?
What's that?
Are you guys going out?
I don't know. We go for walks in our neighborhood. I had late coverage yesterday, so my wife got to take out. We have she's almost 18 months, our younger one, and our younger one, and our older one is she is 3 years and a few months. So she took them out for a walk yesterday in their neighborhood. There's a lot of decorations in our neighborhood, so luckily, at least the older one now knows about trick or treating because she's read Pete the Cat's Halloween book. Yeah, we love Pete the Cat.
Yep.
But she hasn't actually gone trick or treating before that she remembers. So it's not like we're taking something away from her yet, because it's all about, expectations, right?
That's how life works.
Life is all about expectations. Things can either be great or crappy just based on what we thought something would be. So she doesn't really know yet. And so we've given her candy, and we ran into one of my wife's coworkers who lives in the neighborhood, and they have 2 kids, and they met up and gave them candy yesterday in a bag. And it just, my kids, my older one got so excited. So she thinks Halloween is the best thing, and she just got candy from one person.
Yeah.
So we're setting the bar low.
That's right.
And today we'll probably walk around the neighborhood again. I guess there's some places where there's, things going on, but whenever there's things going on, there's people going on. And we're trying to, with 2 healthcare workers, especially, we're trying to minimize risk to ourselves and also to other people. Numbers going up nationally, just not worth the risk at the moment. So, and our kids have multiple costumes, and every day they're wearing something different. And so
every day is Halloween.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it should be when you're 3 years old, because you get to live like this judgment-free life at that age. You just get to do, if it doesn't hurt somebody else.
Yeah.
And actually, we could put a little bit of that into our regular lives.
Exactly. I'm trying to become more like a 3-year-old at the age of 35.
Exactly. I think a lot of us could do that. All right. So, and by the way, how cold is it over there right now? North Carolina has great weather, but haven't had snow yet, right?
No, it's not that bad. It's like in the 50s and 60s.
Oh, okay. That's like perfect going outside for a walk weather.
Totally.
Okay. So most people who know you as the physician philosopher. How long ago? I think I met you at FinCon maybe 3 years ago. Might have been.
Yeah, it'd have been 2 or 3 years. So the physician philosopher was created in November of 2017. So it's right at 3 years old at this point.
Right. Okay. All right. Fantastic. And you started off as an anonymous blogger, right?
I did.
Yeah, as a lot of people start out.
Yeah.
Okay. And your blog picked up steam. And at what point did you go public?
Yeah, so the transition point was when I wrote a book. So I wrote The Physician Philosopher's Guide to Personal Finance, and that came out in like February of what was that? It was a year and a half later, so 2019. Okay. At that point, I had a name with my branding on it.
Book.
it's a published book, so it's kind of hard to stay anonymous at that point. So I actually met with my chair and discussed, the potential issues and like whether there were any concerns. And he was actually really supportive. And so I became non-anonymous at that point. And it was actually a lot more comfortable for me. Like a lot of people are like, oh, like I want to stay in anonymity. And that actually makes it really hard for your brand to grow.
Oh yeah.
And in addition to that, like I am in real life a brutally transparent, honest, like wear my heart on my sleeve kind of guy. And so it was actually a lot more comfortable for me being non-anonymous because that's how I am in real life. Like my residents know that they can ask me anything, which is how, all this stuff got started, was people asking me about personal finance topics and then started diving into it.
Right. Yeah, no, it is, it's probably a weight taken off your shoulders. You don't have to like constantly be thinking about, oh, is this going to let out the secret? And then, then you can be more open. And then it's like, oh, well, now that I'm being open, people are going to correlate this and this with me. But, that's really all, at the end of the day, some people will care about specific things, but at the end, I mean, most people actually don't care about a lot of the things that we might think they care about. And so,
yeah. And you really have to, I mean, like if you're going to be successful in this space, like, I mean, I finally, and I used to have very thin skin when I first started, because you're going to upset people. Like there's no way to
older your skin.
Yeah. And so like, I finally got to the space where, you can either be judged or ignored. Like if your brand is out there, like there are going to be people that don't like it. There are going to be people that are raving fans that love everything that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm finally in that space where like, I'm trying to help the people that want the help from the physician philosopher. And that's where my focus goes now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's a lot of people in the world, and if you find the people that really like you, that's a lot more valuable than being kind of in the middle and trying to get these out, because there's so many people out there, and we're only tapping into the tiniest percentage of them as it is.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So you became public, became part of the WCI network around that time?
Yeah, it was right around that time. It was just after that, after the book getting published.
All right. Fantastic. And then at some point, how did you transition? I mean, you're still the physician philosopher, and we still all know you as such. How did coaching come into your life? Can you kind of tell me a little bit about that? Because a lot of physicians still only tangentially have heard about it. And I was really the same way up until about 6 months ago.
Yep. So, it's a bit of a story, but the way that I explain it to people is like, I was the classic overachiever. So, and like many physicians. And so I got a little girl that's coming downstairs. All right. And,
all the time
with no Halloween costume on. So, can't come on board.
Right.
But, so so what was happening is I was burning out. Like I was writing about burnout and financial freedom on the physician philosopher since the very beginning. I've always written about both of those topics. And ironically, 6 months into that, I ended up getting burned out myself. And so I started trying to deal with that process. And I didn't really know what to do, because on the outside, all anyone saw was like, I was the class president, student body president of my medical school. I was chief resident. I ended up winning teaching awards my first year that no one had ever won. And I was publishing randomized control trials and had a successful business and a good marriage. And like my 3 kids are pretty well behaved. And so like, I'm in this situation where like from the outside, everything looked great, but like I was miserable. I was burned out. I was depressed. At the nadir, at the bottom of this, I was passively suicidal. And so like, and I was on the outside, like this happy-go-lucky guy who can't smile enough. And so I finally realized that I needed help. And so I got therapy. I tried antidepressants, and was on those for 9 months, for the first time in my life. And then I ended up finding coaching. And because what turned out happening is that in the middle of this, I got diagnosed with Graves' disease. And so, as strange as it sounds, I was actually really happy that I got diagnosed with Graves' disease. Cause like, exactly. There's a reason for why I feel this way. And then my endocrinologist, she's amazing. She actually happened to be one of my educators in medical school too, but she's incredible. She gets me on methimazole, gets me euthyroid, and my burnout doesn't go away. So that was the point at which I was like, okay, I'm concerned. Like, it's not my thyroid. I thought it was my thyroid. It's not. And so ended up getting coaching, and that was what really turned everything around for me. Was diving into the thoughts that led to how I felt, that led to how I was showing up in the world as a dad that was angrier than I wanted to be, and didn't really, I don't know, I just wasn't being the kind of dad that I wanted to be and had been for some years. I kind of lost my old self, and so coaching turned it around for me. And then I ended up becoming a coach because of how profound of an impact it had on my life. And since then, it's had even more of an impact. Like, my business is growing because of coaching. I'm a better husband. I'm a better dad. I'm a better doctor. I love going to work now. I'm more engaged at work. And I get to pick the things that I want to say yes to and say no to everything else. Like, it's really impacted and touched every area of my life. But it started because of burnout.
Okay, so let's talk about the burnout piece, because the statistics on physician burnout are overwhelming. And
Yeah.
I think in real life, physicians talk a lot less about burnout, or at least in my experience, than they even talk about money. And very few of them even talk about money. And so obviously these two things are incredibly important, and yet they're very little part of the candor amongst physicians just in general. Now, I mean, you and I, we talk about these things all the time, but you walk into a hospital, and I've never heard about people actively talk about burnout like as a regular, because there's a lot of probably shame associated with it. But it's like
Totally.
half of physicians.
Yeah. And the way that happens is that, shame can actually transition into overgeneralization, which means that it becomes part of your identity. And what people will start saying is like, the self-speak that they have in their head is like, what's wrong with me? Like what's wrong with me? Like, and they're afraid to admit it out loud, even though we know that the system is broken, that the culture of medicine is not where it needs to be, that, the system needs to change. If your thought process stops there, doctors feel completely powerless. And so I think a lot of them are like, why even discuss this? Because like, the system's the problem. Like, why even discuss like individual solutions? And I always argue that, like, yes, 100%, totally agree with you. The system is broken, needs to be fixed, but there are things that we can do on an individual level to fight back, to empower us, that leave us not feeling powerless. But yeah, I agree. It's not a common conversation. And the reason why is because of shame. It is because doctors who, otherwise feel like they don't always have to ask for help. They feel like they're very strong, intelligent, dedicated, hardworking people, and they want to work their way through this problem. And that's just not the way that it works. So when they can't do that, they feel shame. They feel like they're failing. And failure is probably the one thing that doctors like to feel the least.
Absolutely. So if you were to point out, let's say, one thing as a physician that you think made you feel the most burned out, a lot of people say like the EMR or call, or
Yeah.
if you were to say like one thing or a few things, what would you say as an academic anesthesiologist? Because I think on the outside looking in, and the same for my specialty, a lot of people are like, how could you be feeling burned out at your job? Because they compare themselves to a different situation where they're like, well, this I could see getting burned out, but people might say, oh, you probably have the good life.
Yeah, totally. And I wouldn't disagree with that. I've got a good schedule. And so really, all of the causes, if you look at all of them, the umbrella term that they all come underneath is a lack of autonomy. And so for me, it was a lack of ability to control my schedule. So I couldn't control like when I had to come to work, when I could leave. I couldn't control whether I missed my kid's t-ball game or things at home. And then that would cause problems with me feeling like a bad dad. And so really, it was a lack of control. It was a lack of autonomy over my life. And so I started to realize that one of the things that I care about more than just about anything is freedom.
Yeah.
And so, working towards that, that involved, efforts in my business, that involved efforts elsewhere. But like, I had to first figure out like what the cause was. And for me, it was a lack of autonomy. And so now I've worked towards, fixing that problem in pretty much every area of my life that I can.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I have very similar thoughts. I mean, I'm in private practice, and um, I used to think that in the private practice world, a lot of the things would be very different from academia. Like there would be less politics.
Yeah.
Okay? And no, there's
Not so.
politics,
Yeah.
right? And I used to think that I would be able to control my practice. Nope.
Not much.
I mean, I'm a partner, and I mean, I get compensation like I'm a private practice partner, but I'm part of a big private practice. And even in my facility, there's 3 of us.
Right.
And as much as I still, I mean, we're both entrepreneurs and people in business, and that's part of what stems from our desire for autonomy.
Right.
And so I think it's the autonomy issue for people like me in a place where I don't have that. Like, for the outside looking in, again, the job looks great, but it's very difficult when you can't just seemingly really easy things
Yeah.
to change that you know would produce results.
Yeah. And that's,
Do them.
yeah. And that's the cause of moral injury, right? Is like knowing what needs to be done, knowing how to take care of a patient, knowing how to fix the system, knowing what would work if you could just snap a wand and make it happen, and the system will not let you do it. And so that is exactly the process that leads to moral injury, which, you know, is often a better term in this space, but unfortunately, it's not very colloquial yet. You know, it hasn't made it into the common vernaculum. But like vernacular speech, you know, like the thing is like that's exactly it. Whether you're in private practice, whether you're in academics, the lack of autonomy is what leads to the vast majority of physicians burned out.
Yeah, it is unbelievable. And I went through coaching too this summer. And part of why my show relaunched was because I kind of realized that. And I thought about what things I could do. And we're going to go through the model in a second, but I realized that part of that was lacking in my life was my ability to teach, because I'm not in academia anymore, but I love teaching, and teaching has been very important to me. I used to be a teacher before I went to college or to medical.
I do that.
Yeah, I taught high school, and I love teaching. I used to tutor like from middle school, high school, college, med school, and all the way through. And then I became in private practice, and I still teach occasionally, but not on any sort of regular extent. And so this became a great outlet for me that also provided the autonomy outside. Just this was like my little baby.
Yep.
And we have like our real estate and those other things, but it didn't provide the real teaching opportunities. And so now I kind of put it all together, and I just said, you know what, let me just see how this goes. I'm going to start doing this again 3 months ago and set some goals and see, because I didn't want to do it forever if I didn't feel like it was providing value.
Yeah.
So I kind of gave myself some concrete goals and said, okay, I want to get to this size of a community in this amount of time, and really pushed for it. And if I get there, and I think WCI did the same thing, is that if I'm not making $1,000 at the end of a year, I'm just going to scrap it because it's just not worth the time. Right. So I gave myself a clear goal, and I said, in 2 months, I want to hit these numbers. If I don't do it, then fine. But at least I gave it a chance. But I really set that goal so that I would accomplish it, and I did it. And so now it's been, I was starting at episode 30, and that was 88 days ago.
It's crazy.
I know. And it's like, I have all these people, and they're like, oh, you're providing so much value. But I, ends up giving me more value at the end.
Yeah.
Because I'm way less burned out, having been able to kind of divert a lot of that angst, because I was focusing so much on my private practice. I'm like, I'm trying to fix this. This is the most important thing. But you know what? Let me just go over here and let me just create.
Right. And
you know what? You can't change all of those things, and you have to find a way to work with it. So kind of take me through your model. So you're talking about autonomy being one of the main issues. Take me through the CTFAR model of how you may have changed your process, which has helped you become more burned out.
Yeah. So I think the thought that I used to have that really led to a lot of my negative feelings was, like, why does it have to be this way? Like, I just felt like I'm not in control, and so that's like the thing, like, I wish it wasn't like this, or, I would just get angry because I'd have the thought, like, I don't want to be here right now. Like, something else is going on. My kid's got a t-ball game. My little girl's got a recital, or, she's at gymnastics. Like, I want to be there and I'm not. And so, like, I would get really frustrated thinking like, this is not where I need to be right now. And I couldn't control that. And so, because that's the way the circumstances work, right? Circumstances are often out of your control. But the thought that I had that like, I didn't want to be here right now was definitely not a helpful thought, because then I would just make me angry, and I'd be anxious about leaving. And then something else would come up, and like, there'd be some other complication. I'd have to stay. Like, not only was I not going to leave then, but I actually was going to be there for another 2 hours because something happened and like a really difficult case came up, and like, it was just inappropriate to leave. And so like, all of these things were out of my control. And so, the feeling would be anxiety, stress, constantly feeling overwhelmed. It's common. It was a common feeling for me. And then, the action I would take is doing nothing. I just didn't do anything, because I felt like there was nothing that I could do. And the result is that nothing changed. And it was like that for probably the better part of 2 years. And then, like you, I actually ended up stepping into, and it's going to look different for everybody, but the end result for me ended up stepping into my business. And so, I had some doubts about my business. So I had two models going on at the same time. One was how I felt at work, which was not good. And then the other was my business, and being like, well, it's not quite where it needs to be yet for me to like really go part-time, for me to really advance in that direction and take autonomy over something that I control completely. And which is the wrong way to think about it, right? Because like, if you step into the mindset of like, the success is inevitable here, and you really step into that and believe it, and you recognize
you're on this show now, Jimmy.
Yeah, I know, right? I have arrived, Victor. It's
we have 2 listeners today.
Boom. 2 best listeners out there.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Probably my wife and maybe yours.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, so like, I ended up, the thought model that I ended up stepping into actually started backwards. So I started with the result of like having an autonomous business that would allow me to go part-time. Right. And then I started doing the things that would be required for that to happen. So I started thinking about how I can provide value to my readers and listeners. And I started thinking about like, what sort of mind space am I going to have to be in to do that? And so I started working backwards until I had the circumstance where I had a business in addition to my academic gig, which I'd always had. I've had that for 3 years. I've had that since I finished training, basically. I'm in my 4th or 5th year now. And then I started taking the actions that were necessary to do that. And so the thought model that I'm in now is that I want more and more control over my life, and that I don't feel bad about. I don't feel bad about it, because what happened before is I had a lot of doctor guilt.
Yeah. Like, I suffer from that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think all of us do, because we are trained to do that. That's how we're groomed to become successful, is to basically make other people happy.
Right. And so I had a lot of doctor guilt too, stepping back a little bit from academics, because I'd been successful at what I was doing. And a lot of us feel that way. They're like, oh, well, they asked me to do this because, I could really help them. And we don't realize that there's always someone else they can ask. Like we're not the only people. And so I started saying, I started a hell yes policy, where I only say yes to things that, really get me going. Like, they really excite me, and I say no to everything else.
Wow. So when did you start? When did you instill that model? Because that's the life-changing model.
Yeah. So that actually was probably just prior to coaching. I kind of gotten to that point on my own, where I was like, I just, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. Right. And so like, I got to the point where I realized that by saying yes to committees, or the book chapter, or the manuscript, the project at work, I was saying no to my wife and my kids.
Right.
And when I sat down, and it never ends. And so by saying yes to those things, I was saying no to my family, and I was no longer willing to do that.
Yeah.
If my autonomy and my family and my friends were what is most important to me in life, then my decisions in life should reflect that, as opposed to like hoping that I accidentally walk into a life where my priorities line up with the things that I'm doing. I said, no, I'm gonna start saying hell yes to things that really get me excited, that are accomplishing my purpose, my impact, my mission. And that, line up with my priorities. And I'm going to say no to everything else. So when I had someone come up to me recently, it's like, hey, can you, I saw that you have, several thousand Twitter followers. Like, do you mind? I'm going to do the social media, webinar and teach other people about this. And I said, look, I probably can't do that. I've got a lot of other stuff going on. And if it happens to line up with my schedule and I happen to be available, but like, I wouldn't move forward, like planning on me being there. And she was like, really? I was like, yeah. Like I just can't. You can only say yes to so many things. And so if I said yes to that, that's an hour-long webinar where I'm saying no to something else. And but like it blows people's mind the first time you tell them no.
Yeah, no, people are used to getting things for free, and
Right.
most importantly, your time, because we learn to not value our time.
Right.
We are trained that our time is initially worthless or negative, then it's worth less than minimum wage.
Right.
And
then it's free.
Yeah. And so, yeah, can you just, I just want, let me just buy you lunch. Like, that lunch is so expensive, and it's not the food. Because if I lose an hour of time at work, that's an hour at home I don't get home for. And I mean, my kids start bedtime routine at 7:00. So if I'm not home by 6:00, which I'm still not home by 6:00 most days, but if I get home at 6, then I have one quality hour with them before it's time to go to bed. But a lot of days, I'm just trying to get there by 7, so I can like do bath time, book time, and put them to sleep, so I can get that quality time with them. That's just, I mean, 1 hour difference is the difference between like 50% of your time with your child.
Yeah, no, and so that's exactly what ended up changing everything for me. Is that I said like my oldest kid, like I've got 3 children. Grace is going to turn 10 in April. Wesley just turned 7 this week, and then Anna Ruth is 4. So
I'm just doing the math. You started growing your children growing your children.
Growing my children. Yes. We grew them from the ground. They sprouted up. Yes. So So
like beginning of residency, or this is med school?
Last week of 3rd year of med school.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's actually the perfect time to get started, because you have 4th year.
We nailed it. So we had a kid during 4th year of med school. We had a kid during my 2nd year of residency.
Oh, good job. Missed intern year. Okay.
And a kid during my fellowship. And so, but the thing is like, that is exactly what happened. And so like, we decided very intentionally to have kids young, because we wanted to be able to be, active with them when they had kids, or when they were, kind of moving out. But like, I only have 9 years left with my little girl, like my oldest little girl.
Oh, God. It's scary to think about these things.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I got to the point where I'm 35, but like, I'm unwilling to accept the idea that like, I have to be anywhere else other than with my little girl when important things are happening in her life. That is an unacceptable situation for me. And so when I got there, I was like, look, I'm gonna have to figure this out. I don't know if that means like, going locums, or like doing what I need to do to practice as a physician or a business owner. Like, I'm going to do whatever is necessary for me to be at every single important life event for my children. I'm just not going to miss them. I refuse to miss them. And the idea that like, you don't have a choice is this lie that medicine sells to us. That, like, you don't have a choice. And it's like, that's not really true. Like, everyone has a choice. It's just a matter of figuring out what that looks like. And, but yeah, that thought was really what drove me to really dive into my business this year. Was that like, my kids, like, I'm not going to miss them. I just can't do it. And the older they get, the harder that is. Like, when they're super little, you're like, I mean, they're probably not even going to remember this, honestly. Like, this is hurting me more than it's hurting them. But then as they get older and they start saying like, hey, daddy, like, why do you have to go to work?
Yeah. No, my 3-year-old now says, don't go to Officina tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll say goodnight to her. It's like, don't go tomorrow. Okay. Play, stay here and play with me tomorrow.
Exactly. And
like, oh my God, like, those thoughts are so clearly defined.
Yep.
Like, there's no equivocating about what she wants.
Nope.
And she says it, and it's not even whining. She's like, okay, good night, daddy. Just don't go to work tomorrow, so you play with me.
Yeah. And there's tremendous amount of dad guilt, mom guilt when that happens.
Right.
And which is something that a lot of people end up getting coaching on.
Yeah.
But the truth is like, coming to that realization as my kids got older and older and older, that I was unwilling to miss them growing up.
Yeah.
Is what put me into part-time work in medicine. So I'm now 0.85 clinically. And by the end of this year, I'll probably be 0.6. And so like, it wasn't worth it. The money wasn't worth it.
Right. Yeah. And I think, financially, that it all starts off with living well below your means, right?
Right.
You do that, and then you have so many options if you're willing to pursue them.
Yep.
A lot of people say, well, I don't necessarily want to do a private practice job, or do this job that makes a lot more money, because, I value this. Okay. And then some other, work related thing they value. And then you ask them, well, how much do you value your time with your family? Well, that's like number one. And then
Right.
you say, well, what if you have to choose two things in as a group, which would you rather choose? Like the job that's a little bit more ideal and but you don't spend time with your kids, or the job that's a little bit less ideal, but you get way more time with your kids. Like the people often don't think about it that way. They think they compare job to job as in job as by itself.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what's even more common in our community is this idea that like, okay, well, no, like, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my tail off, and I'm going to squirrel away as much money as I can. I'm going to build my real estate empire. I'm going to, get all this passive income coming through, or I'm going to save enough in my nest egg. Like I'm going to have a 80% savings rate, and I'm going to make myself miserable for like 5 or 7 years, just so that in 5 or 7 years I can enjoy life.
Mm-hmm.
And that one topic is probably, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had to coach somebody on that, because they make themselves miserable, and they've lost this idea that like you're actually allowed to, believe it or not. I know it sounds crazy, but you're allowed to enjoy the journey. Like it's not just about the destination. Like we all have this arrival fallacy that we think like someday when we get there, we're going to be happy. And as it turns out, like most of the people that I know that have that mentality, like I'm just going to, destroy myself for 5 years and get to my goal. Like they are miserable when they are on the way there, and then they finally get there and they're miserable at the end. And the reason why is because they never learned how to enjoy the journey. And so I coach people on that, like that exact topic all of the time, because exactly what you're saying, like, if you could just make a decision that might make a little less money, but the quality of your life is substantially better, in the end, you're going to enjoy the journey, and you're going to enjoy it when you get there.
Yeah, no, that's really super powerful. Because a lot of us don't think about, we're finishing training and we're focusing on, A, getting a job, and B, what this job is going to look like, but we don't necessarily plan out what your life is going to look like 5 years from now.
Totally.
Once you make that first choice, it sets you on a particular trajectory. And do you really want to be on that trajectory? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you have to think about more than just the job itself.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, like when we were coming up with our call schedule, I mean, there's only 3 of us. And we're all pretty good at working with each other. And I specifically asked for yesterday, the Friday before Halloween, to not be my day to cover late at the facility. And I had it on the schedule.
Yeah.
And I was not late, and somebody else was. But then family emergencies occurred, and the other person was out of town, and I heard about the emergency, and I said, you know what, anything you need me to do, I will take care of it. But that was because I made the choice to be a good partner, and so I didn't get to be home yesterday and take my kids out, which I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to take care of my relationships with my partners and the practice. And but those are the times when it's like really valuable that my time is being used, because I mean, that's when the practice really needs me for that hour. And choice. I said, you know what? I volunteered. So I'll do whatever I need to. And I felt completely in control of it. And it didn't upset me nearly to the extent it would have if I was like, forced into the situation where
because of the control, because you felt like you were making that decision yourself. It didn't have the same impact. Yeah. And that's exactly it. But yeah. And I think that anybody who's a physician has been in that situation, right? Where like something comes up and like, I mean, this happened to me like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I had, I was supposed to be leaving at like 4:30, and I'd been there since like 5:45 that morning, and I took over a case, and the patient was dying.
All right, really tough case, and
the patient was dying, and like I was there till 7:30.
Right.
That's
the time where you're really needed. Right. As physicians, like our time is very valuable, but we don't want people we just don't want people to waste our time. Like
exactly.
If I'm going to miss something important, it better be damn important that I'm missing it.
100%.
Right? Like, don't keep me here waiting because we didn't have the staff to turn the room over.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Like, do you need me to get in there and clean the room?
I've done it. Yeah, we actually, I tell this story all the time in like in a different forum. So I teach our safety culture where I work. But yeah, I had that exact situation happen. I had like an 89-year-old lady who broke like 12 ribs downstairs, and I needed to put a thoracic epidural in her, and like she was not doing well. She needed the epidural, And like she was down there for like 2 or 3 hours, and they're like, and I asked them like, what's holding it up? And they're like, oh, the room won't get cleaned. And so I was like, okay. So I went up to the ICU. I cleaned the room myself, went downstairs. I went to they're like, well, now we don't have a transporter. I was like, oh, you do have a transporter. And so I grabbed the chart, threw it on the bed, and started pointing like, you can't do that. And I was like,
I can't do it.
I'm doing it right now. Like,
right.
actually, like I'm doing this right now. I will give the report to the nurse myself. Is there anything you'd like me to share? And they're like, yeah, just tell them that she got her meds like 30 minutes ago. I was like, okay, I'll let them know. And so I pushed her upstairs and ended up throwing a thoracic epidural in her like 30 minutes later. And it's like, but that's the thing. Like, I didn't mind doing extra work, because the second that I started doing all that, I was in control. I was cleaning the room. I was transporting the patient. And like, no, I probably am not normally doing those things. I'm certainly not practicing at the top of my license when I'm doing that.
Right.
But I helped the patient, and I felt like I was in control.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I feel like all of us, if we are really making a difference, then that's what's most satisfying when you're, as a physician, is when you're actually making a difference in healthcare. It's when you feel like, we have no control, and basically we're being wasted as a resource, and we don't feel valued.
Right.
Right.
Totally.
What was crazy is when I came home, and my kids had just got back from their walk, as I pulled in the driveway, and my 3-year-old said, said, Daddy. And I said, I'm so sorry I didn't come home, get to go for a walk with you. And she said, don't be sad. Don't be sad. And then she said, and she was quoting Pete the cat. She said, don't be sad. Don't be blue.
Yeah.
Because there's a book where it says, there's something everyone can do. And she said it right out loud, and she had a smile on her face and gave me a hug. And I was like, wow, that's like so emotionally mature.
I needed
that she is actually, grasping this. So it was really, really, really powerful. And just being in control, making those kinds of decisions have really changed how I go about my work. I've felt a lot less stressed out at work, a lot less burned out at work, in so many ways, letting go of the things that, I don't have control of, taking more control of the things I may have control of.
Mm-hmm.
There are often things that are not related to my work at all.
Right. Totally. Completely agree. Yeah.
All right. So, you have a program. Can you give me the synopsis about your program that you're launching? And first of all, you're in the coaching space. Most coaches, at least that I know of, are women. Mm-hmm. How many guy coaches out there that are you familiar with? Because you're the first one that I know who's a real experienced male coach.
Yeah. So I think that the last time I've talked to Sunny, who, is amazing and most people know in this space.
For everybody.
Yeah. So Sunny Smith is amazing. So she's coached Victor. She's my coach too. So she said that there's 160 life coaches that are physicians that work with other physicians. And right now, I think 137 of them are women. And of that 137, the vast majority actually only work with women. And so, they are wonderful, amazing coaches accomplishing wonderful things for medicine and empowering women physicians. But unfortunately, if you're a guy, like there previously was not a lot of options. So now the alpha coaching experience exists, and alpha comes from my philosophy roots. Just for anyone that's curious, I get questions about this all the time. Never even crossed my mind that I would get these questions, but so alpha, first letter in the Greek alphabet. Coaching is like learning a new language, and it's your alpha step. It's your first step into that foray. So that's where alpha came from. Was my roots in philosophy. That's why it's called the Physician Philosopher.
Okay.
So it's a 12-week program. And so there are 12 weeks of weekly group coaching once a week. And then there are 8 one-on-one calls. So you get 20 coaching calls during that time period. It also includes video coaching content, kind of like an online course for coaching tools. It includes a book about physician coaching tools as well to kind of introduce you to the topic, so you can start the program, running. You don't have to wonder what all the stuff is. Like you can read that 40-page PDF book that I created before you get in and kind of start the ground running. And then you get support from coaches in the community in between. There's a text app that we use to help support the community so that people can communicate. So those are the bones of the program, and it's going to grow as we know what the needs of our clients are. So we actually send out a needs assessment and then build the program for them specifically.
That's awesome. So are you doing the 8 one-on-one coaching sessions yourself, the individual ones?
So no. So I do the group calls each week. And then we hand select alpha coaches to come in and coach the clients on the one-on-one calls. Because of the volume of people that we think we'll have, it would be like literally impossible for me to do all the one-on-ones. And I also think that it's a tremendous value to have other multiple perspectives from coaching. So getting coaching from multiple different coaches is highly valuable. I found that valuable myself. And so that's why we built the program the way that we did. So you can get coaching from a variety of coaches. And one week you might want coaching on life. The next week you might want it on marriage. The next week you might want it on burnout or your career or money or, business coaching. And so we wanted to bring in different coaches from different niches to allow for that experience so that you get the coaching you need each week.
All right. So this has helped you not just at your physician job, but also in your business, personal life, everything. And I think that's, the same for me and for most people. Now the program is $5,000, right? For the 12-week program. If you were to, let's just go find like value in comparison to an alternative. If I were just to go, let's say, look up in the phone book, AAA coaching services, number one in the phone book. And I called them up and I said, hey, I need a quote for 8 one-on-one sessions. What would you say is the average going rate just for the 8 one-on-one going single sessions these days?
So it's going to be for physicians, like for physician coaches, it's going to be somewhere in the $3,000 to $5,000 range.
Just for 8 single sessions.
Yeah. I mean, and like, I think the lowest that I've heard recently, maybe $2,500 for 6, I think is what I heard.
$100 an hour, kind of on like the low end.
Yeah. And the trouble is, and what I talk to people about, because they'll say like, oh, well, why can't I just go get a one-on-one coach? You totally can. Like, I want doctors to get help. So I honestly don't I think that the alpha coaching experience provides one of the best places for you to do that. But if you want to go get a one-on-one coach, that's fine. But the process is you're going to interview a bunch of people. You're going to have to hope that they're a good coach. You're going to have to hope that they coach on the topics that you need every week, which may change. Instead of depending on a program to go and find the best coaches for you, and then have the different niches available so that you can change coaches if you don't like the one that you had the week prior, or if you have a different need the second, third, fourth, fifth week. And so one-on-one coaching, you're really you're going to send in that bill, you're going to pay it up front. Right. And then you're just going to have to hope that the experience is really good.
Right. And then you also have the 12 group sessions. So you get these 20 sessions of curated coaches in one package. And, when I signed up for my program at about the same price, I was like, oh, I was first thinking about it as $5,000. Like, this is expensive.
Right.
But then, okay, so we were just comparing it to an alternative, but let's compare it to not having coaching. Right. And think about the value that coaching brings in your whole life, even from just a financial aspect, if not from all the other aspects. I don't think there's a dollar that is more valuable.
Yeah. And so we had 10 beta clients go through the program to really test it out. And
beta alpha clients.
Yeah. Super confusing. We love Greek over at the Physician Philosopher. So, so they were the beta clients, and that's exactly what multiple of them said. Like, the words that they used were like life-changing, game-changing, best professional decision I've made all year. And one of them even pointed out the cost value discussion that we're having and said, like, look, if this makes you more engaged at work or keeps you in your job for an extra 6 months or a year, like that $5,000 investment, the return on investment on that money is going to be off the charts. Like, that's how Joe put it. And it's like, and that is exactly true. Like, if you can wrap your head around what it means to you and what the value is worth of being a better partner, a better parent, a better physician, I mean, this is a small price to pay in order to be better and show up better in all those areas of your life. And if you happen to be someone that's a budding entrepreneur or business owner, I mean, like, the numbers get very measurable very quick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've seen that myself, and it's finally, it's nice to see. I just wanted to grow an audience. I just wanted my content to get to ears. And that, to me, because numbers and dollars, we make so many of those that that was not the primary incentive. And, when I get paid for a lot of things and real estate and whatnot, and I can monetize this, but most importantly is just knowing that I provide value. And I would literally pay my own money to make sure that other people are getting so much value, because it's so valuable to me.
Yeah. And that's what happens in business.
Right. I just want to help people. So that is awesome. How do people find out more and consider joining this program?
Yeah, so there's one last webinar right now. So the coaching program ends enrollment. We stop enrolling students midnight on November 2nd, so Monday. So if you want to read more about the program, read testimonials, read everything there is to know about the program, you can go to thephysicianphilosopher.com/alpha. It's ALPHA. And if you want to attend the last webinar where we teach you some of the self-coaching tools so you can have an example of what those look like, you can go to thephysicianphilosopher.com/webinar and find out more information there if you'd like. And that's Sunday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. And so we have that one last webinar, but the doors for enrollment for this fall cohort close Monday, November 2nd at midnight.
Okay, awesome. I forgot to mention real quick for the non-believers, is there actual data to support coaching?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So the most recent one that's been, the most talked about and the most powerful is from JAMA 2019. And they compared, is a randomized control trial where they compared doctors who got actual coaching to those who just had like some self-coaching tools available to them. And the ones that actually got coaching, that talked with a real life human being, 6 sessions, 3.5 hours, drastically reduced their burnout, improved their quality of life, improve their, life satisfaction, their resilience. And so there's evidence in physicians from professional coaches that this will help you with all of those measures. So yeah, absolutely. There's evidence now. And we know that there was other prior evidence too for like peer-to-peer support groups and for those that have the chance to even just like air out their thoughts. Because as it turns out, we're not very good at coaching ourselves. It requires you talking to another human being to understand what your thoughts are.
Go figure.
Yeah. And so, when we do that, there's opportunity for change. But a lot of people say like, no, I'm just gonna do it on my own and I'm just gonna try to figure this stuff out. And it's like, I mean, you can do that, but you'll end up realizing whether now or 6 months from now that you need to talk to somebody in order to actually employ the tools you're learning.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the people who are the very, very top of their profession.
They have coaches.
Athletes, they all have coaches.
100%.
You don't get there without a coach.
That's exactly right.
It's like a 5% difference. That's the difference between being at the top of your field or being at the middle, upper part of the pack.
Completely agree.
Right. So I'm yet to find somebody who has not found value out of coaching. And I have actually no affiliation here because I haven't actually done any affiliations. And so this is honestly just completely non-financially directly related. So I can 100% vouch for it. Made a huge difference for me, my wife, our family, and everybody that we probably come around, at least to some extent. So where else do people find the Physician Philosopher?
Yeah, so you can go to thephysicianphilosopher.com to read the blog. There's also a podcast, same name, The Physician Philosopher, which comes out every Monday. And for those of you that are listening that are more financially minded, I also run the Money Meets Medicine podcast with Ryan Inman. So that's our combined effort between Financial Residency and the Physician Philosopher. That comes out on Wednesdays. So those are places people can find me.
You're still working 0.85 right now?
0.85. Well, yeah. And so that's what led to a lot of my burnout, right? Was like buffering by overachieving.
Yeah.
So, I was running a business 20 to 25 hours a week while I was working another 50 to 60 at the hospital. Right. That's a great way to burn out.
100%. All right. Thank you so much, Jimmy, for your time. Everybody, hopefully you'll see this replay because it's awesome. I'm glad to have you here. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. Good luck with your with your program. I hope you get a ton of people and we can get more physicians coached.
Thanks, Victor.
Right. Have a great night.
I appreciate you, man. See ya.
Take care.